Welcome to the Binning Report. Coming up in this edition, a new badge identifies NCO instructors.
And one Fort Benning course helps prevent injuries before they happen.
Later, hear the inspiring story of the Triple Nickels.
Welcome to the Benning Report. I'm Melissa Bell.
And I'm David Wright with the Fort Benning Public Affairs Office. Thanks for watching.
The most recent wearable badge authorized by the Army was awarded to Fort Benning soldiers for the first time. We bring you the Instructor Badge and how the Army is recognizing the important role instructors play in teaching, training, and mentoring the future force.
Line the flat part up, orange dot, push down, turn to the right.
They're often called the backbone of the United States Army, and they're receiving recognition for their vital role in developing the Army's soldiers of tomorrow. For the first time at Fort Benning, a new badge is being awarded to instructors at the Henry Caro Non-Commissioned Officer Academy, as the Army seeks to recognize their professionalism.
What you're going to see today is 35 to 36 quality instructors across 8 different courses, ranging from the Warrior Leaders course to Advanced Leader course and Maneuver Senior Leader course. And these instructors have met the requirements for the Basic Army Instructor Badge.
On top of instructor requirements, for the Basic Army Instructor Badge, soldiers must complete 80 hours of primary instructor time, as well as passing 2 consecutive evaluations. For the Senior Badge, instructors must meet 400 hours of primary instruction, and in addition, the Master Badge requires that instructors rewrite a program of instruction that's adopted for the Army.
You won't see a lot of Master Instructor Badges because that will require somebody to serve in that capacity, probably more than one assignment. But we will have several of our senior instructors being awarded the Senior Badge later in the year.
Hey, bravo!
NCOs who teach at the Academy play a key role in preparing future leaders who will impact countless soldiers.
As an instructor at the Senior Leader course, your responsibilities are huge because you're training future platoon sergeants. And an infantry platoon sergeant could have as many as 40 people underneath him. So if you have 16 to 18 students in your classroom, and each one of those people have 40 people underneath them, the people that you're impacting every cycle is huge.
Army leaders hope this badge, along with its promotion points, will add an incentive for soldiers to serve as instructors and level the playing field with other NCO assignments.
Part of your professional development was actually serving as a recruiter, a drill sergeant, or a service school instructor. And now we're going to see the emphasis on that. And both those other courses actually produced an ASI, which these guys get an 8 identifier once they become instructor certified. But they also had a badge associated with it.
Now the additional skill identifier of instructor also has a badge. And for the 36 soldiers who are awarded the badge, future commanders will know they are a valued asset.
When a commander gets one of our instructors into his organization, he's saying, this guy came out of Fort Benning, this guy was awarded the badge, and therefore I think he's a subject matter expert, and I can't wait to put him in front of soldiers in my formation.
Melissa Bell, Fort Benning TV.
The Director of Press Operations for the Department of Defense recently visited Fort Benning, sharing the importance of engaging the media and effectively communicating the Army's message.
Colonel Steve Warren told an audience of young lieutenants and captains that working with the media is a necessity for today's warfighter.
Leaders in America's Army are responsible for the blood and the treasure of our nation. It's our duty to inform the American public what it is that we're doing with human resources and what it is that we're doing with the physical resources, the actual equipment that we're in charge of.
Colonel Warren reminded students that freedom of the press is one of the very things soldiers risk their lives to defend, and pointed out the irony of those that would deny media access and complain when media reports are inaccurate or negative. Soldiers and leaders should not be afraid to engage the media and need to be able to explain an operation or mission. The better an objective can be explained, the more public support it can gather, which can only help the chances of success.
Keep your answers short, keep your answers crisp, and stick to the facts.
In today's world, the explosion of social media has increased the speed of news reporting and shortened the expected response time. It is a change the Army culture has had difficulty matching, but Colonel Warren is in favor of equipping individual soldiers and leaders with the information they need and encourages them to engage on social media platforms on their own.
There is no better spokesman for the American Army than the American soldier.
Warren cautioned the audience that to lose the media space is to lose the freedom of maneuver. Effective communication is the #1 way to garner and maintain support. If one cannot accomplish that, the American public will wonder why lives are being put at risk. Currently, the United States of America faces an enemy that is actively leveraging social media to disseminate its message and recruit people to its cause.
And we in the Army have all this same knowledge. What's critical is that we be willing to bring these tools, this knowledge, and this capability to bear in the battle space. We've said many times that combat power will not defeat ISIS. We have said many times that there is no military solution. The solution is to break their ideology, and that is done in one way only, through communications.
Colonel Warren told the crowd of young officers they should think of media in their battle space the same way they consider the weather or the terrain, both variables included when planning for operations. Likewise, the media will be an element on the battlefield. Sometimes it will be good, sometimes not, but a good leader will account for it and find a way to use it to help execute his or her mission.
Successful engagements come from good preparation, from understanding your mission, and from the confidence that comes from knowing that we're doing the right thing.
David Wright, Fort Benning TV.
Coming up next, soldiers are assessed for fitness prior to basic training.
The Georgia Tech Research Institute is back at Fort Benning, and not only were they able to test the latest in unmanned aerial system technology, but they also gave budding engineers a glimpse into a possible future.
In today's world, drones are becoming ever more present, from military reconnaissance and surveillance operations to package delivery systems.
Autopilot engaged.
Georgia Tech Research Institute was back at Fort Benning advancing unmanned aerial systems technology.
What we're testing out is our autonomy algorithms in order to rendezvous some aircraft to fly in a formation. We've flown 2 aircraft before, but this is the first time we've flown 3 in type formation where we've rendezvoused together and then performed an autonomous landing approach.
For this demonstration, it wasn't about the planes, but the technology inside and the algorithms that let them fly side by side in formation unaided by human controllers.
We use some really inexpensive hobby-style aircraft for what we do because there's inevitably mishaps, and you don't want to have to rebuild a $50,000 airplane every time. So we use $200 hobby-style flying wings for this program. We designed all the avionics mounting and construction techniques such that we protect the expensive parts, and we can just transfer them to a new, cheaper airframe if we need to.
It's the partnership between Fort Benning and GTRI that offers them the prime land to fly this equipment, test algorithms, and gather priceless data to aid in advancing this technology. There to witness this research in action were students from Spencer High School's Science and Electronic Game Design program.
They were in awe by the time the third one was up in the air. They seemed to respond very well in that they saw how we could apply some of this to our robotics team.
Not only does this offer them the motivation to continue in this field, but also for them to see the real-world applications and the collegiate opportunities just around the corner.
Well, we wanted them to get real-life application for what we do in the classroom. I brought 10th, 11th, and 12th graders out to view the demonstration. We do simulation and 3D printing all the time at the school, but for them to come out and see a real demonstration and how research works was just awesome.
I look for programming. I'm an avid programmer, and I like to see how they use the machine language to make the robots communicate and how they're able to make all the instruments work together with no wires.
As GTRI works toward expanding the number of UASs to as many as 100 in the sky at once, students ogled at the possibility, what it would take, and what it would look like. Melissa Bell, Fort Benning TV.
Thousands of new soldiers enter the Army each year, and as they make the transition from civilian life, new soldiers often face the risk of injury. This is why the 30th Adjutant General Reception Battalion created the Initial Entry Training Physical Resilience Enhancement Program, or IPREP.
IPREP was developed as a tool to identify trainees who may be at greater risk of injury when they join the Army. It includes 2 phases, a screening phase and a training program. Since October, all new soldiers are screened so leaders can decide whether they go on to basic or enter the IPREP training program. So far, results are good.
We're doing the best that we can to try and identify an individual that may be more predisposed or have a higher propensity for injury than somebody else. The data that we have collected is favorable, that those that we have identified as needing to go into the Initial Entry Training Physical Resilience Enhancement Program, or IPREP, have done better than a comparison group.
IPREP screening measures cardiovascular endurance by requiring trainees to complete a 1-mile run in under 8 minutes and 30 seconds.
305!
The assessment also includes a pull-up to measure overall strength and 2 movements from the functional movement screening that are most critical to injury identification: a trunk stability push-up and a deep squat.
It's an overhead squat. They hold a dowel rod overhead with their elbows extended, their feet are shoulder width apart, and their goal is to go down below the 90-degree mark at the knees. What we're looking for, are they able to maintain that dowel directly in line with their head, their hips, and their feet.
The trainees are graded from 0 to 3, a 0 if they have pain and a 3 if they can complete the movement perfectly. If they are unable to do so, they are given an alternate position.
With the deep squat, if they're standing on the ground and they can't perform a 3, they don't move perfectly or pristinely, then we put them on a board that's elevated about 2 inches. That kind of takes their ankle mobility out of the equation, and it just makes the movement a little bit easier.
In addition to the physical test and the 2 components of the functional movement screening, there is a shoulder and 2 spine provocation tests that deal with flexion and extension.
We also have 3 pain provocation tests that we look at to see if they're not reporting pain. Can we do some movements to see if the movements cause pain? So the first one, it's a shoulder pain provocation test. And we ask them, do you have pain? And we can also see from their expression, do they appear to be in pain?
To prevent future injuries, a team of cadre, physical therapists, and athletic trainers meet to review individual scores. Soldiers who receive low scores or are unable to complete an aspect may be diverted to the IPREP training program. Katie Cook, Fort Benning TV.
After the break, we celebrate African American Black History Month with a look back at Fort Benning's own 555th Parachute Infantry Regiment.
Fort Benning's Tax Center is now open for business. Soldiers and family members can either walk in or schedule appointments to have their numbers crunched, making it easier than ever to satisfy the Internal Revenue Service.
The red ribbon on Fort Benning's Tax Center has been cut, and that means Fort Benning soldiers and their families have easy access to IRS-trained tax professionals for free.
We got a whole bunch of folks over here who've been school trained now to help folks do taxes, and they're going to do the math for you. So bring your taxes down, and they'll work all the way through that.
The Tax Center is here to make soldiers' lives easier. So this year there's a third option for those with simple returns: the new kiosk system. The kiosks have been installed to help mitigate the wait times for soldiers and family members from about 30 minutes in previous years to a few short minutes.
To cut out the middleman, the soldier can just come in, put in his own information into the computer, and let the computer spit out the answer. Same services he would receive if he used the face-to-face preparer, but he's doing it a lot quicker.
And no need to worry if you have questions when using a kiosk. A tax specialist is standing by to help you if any questions pop up. And to make the service more convenient, the tax center will have extended hours from 9 to 8 Monday through Friday and Saturday from 9 to 4:30.
For the soldiers who can't get off during the duty day, they will be able to utilize the service instead of having to go out on a Saturday and pay someone to do their taxes just because they couldn't get here.
For more information or to see what documents you'll need to bring during your visit to the tax center, visit Fort Benning's Tax Center website at benning.army.mil and click Staff Judge Advocate under the Maneuver Center tab. Katie Cook, Fort Benning TV.
February is African American Black History Month, and Fort Benning joins the rest of the Army in paying tribute to the great valor and distinction displayed by African American soldiers.
From the Battle of Yorktown in 1781 to the 369th Harlem Hellfighters of World War I, African Americans have served with honor. But when one looks back at the history of African American military service, there is a significant event with a direct connection to Fort Benning.
African Americans have had a long history of stellar service here in the United States military, dating all the way back to some of the first combat units being deployed during World War I. The big tie-in that we have that I think of personally as being a paratrooper is the Triple Nickel, the 555 Parachute Infantry Regiment that first stood up here at Fort Benning, Georgia.
The Triple Nickels were the nation's first all-black parachute infantry battalion when the unit was created at Fort Benning in 1944. During a time when most black soldiers drove trucks or served in mess halls, the men of the 555th became a highly trained and effective unit, blazing new trails for future generations of soldiers to follow. While stationed at Fort Benning, the Triple Nickels were on alert for deployment to Europe to support the war effort, but never got their chance. Instead, they received a very different assignment.
They were actually sent to Oregon to fight wildfires that had been started by the Japanese balloon attacks that were actually dropping firebombs in the forests around the Oregon area. And this is something I didn't know until I researched it a little bit. They were actually pushed there, and they became the military's first smoke jumping unit, and they were trained by the Forest Services there in Oregon.
At the time, the Japanese were sending incendiary devices attached to balloons across the Pacific Ocean in a successful attempt to start forest fires in the northwestern United States. But the Triple Nickel smoke jumpers answered the call. Logging more than 1,200 individual jumps during the summer of 1945, the battalion fearlessly answered over 30 fire calls throughout the northwestern United States. The Triple Nickels would go on to serve in more airborne operations in peacetime and war than any other parachute group in history. And history will never forget the courage and heroism this battalion displayed in the 1940s while fighting for a country still not quite ready to treat them as equals.
When the time comes and you are in a combat situation, you could care less what color of skin the person is next to you. I'm glad to say everybody that I work with and most of the people that I call my friends and brothers and the warriors that we fight with, they feel the same way.
Fort Benning will celebrate Black History Month and African American military service with a special observance ceremony on February 19th. David Wright, Fort Benning TV.
Coming up next, we debunk some myths of the military spouse. Something soldiers know how to do is run, and as spring and summer make their appearance, you may notice many soldiers using the warm weather as an excuse to lace up their sneakers. But for many, their trip around the track means more than keeping in shape. Katie Cook finds out how people are making a difference one step at a time.
Many soldiers choose to go above and beyond physical standards and hit the pavement a little harder, not only for personal benefits but for the awareness taking those extra steps may bring. Like Run Ranger Run, an event that started in 2012 when Corporal Corey Smith ran home in an effort to bring attention to the struggle soldiers face when transitioning to civilian life.
Corey had several of his fellow Rangers that had left active duty before him that had very, very difficult transitions. Difficulty finding and keeping a job, difficulty in relationships. And so Corey really wanted to be the physical embodiment of a difficult journey from being a soldier to being a civilian.
Run Ranger Run is a virtual event where individuals on teams complete a combined 565 miles during the month of February. Why 565 miles? Because that's how many Corporal Corey Smith ran, walked, and biked during his trip home from right here in Columbus to Indianapolis, Indiana.
We're obviously running, so it's keeping us moving, in the right direction. But also as the organization,
evolves, especially over the last 3 years. I just think it's moving the process forward. It's raising awareness for soldiers who need the civilian population to understand what they're going through.
While Run Ranger Run takes place during the month of February, there are different runs for charities happening right in your backyard, such as Run for the Fallen, when soldiers gather to run for every military member killed during Operation Iraqi Freedom, or the Elf Run, which raises donations for Santa's Castle.
Running is just, I think, the catalyst of it. People look for reasons to run, especially this time of the year, but really it's just a way to put an event or a face on, what's going on. So, when you're running, you have a lot of me time. There's a lot to think about. So when you have in the back of your head that you're running for a cause or, a certain group of people, then it makes it that much more motivating.
For a list of charity runs in your area, check out online directories like rungeorgia.com or runningintheusa.com. Promoting awareness while advancing your health can be as easy as slipping on those sneakers. Katie Cook, Fort Benning TV.
You may have heard some myths and stereotypes about military spouses. The Army Family Team Building Program is going to help us clear them up and sort fact from fiction.
Many who are new to the Army often experience a culture shock of sorts as they adjust to Army lifestyle. And there's a question of ranks and how chain of command works, and the acronyms that plague new arrivals. But on top of that, there are the stereotypes for military spouses that may have many newcomers confused as to what's expected of them in this new, shall we say, position. Luckily, Army families have the Army Family Team Building Program to put some of those rumors to rest so that spouses of today can be all that they can be.
There really is no stereotype. That stereotype is more along the ways from back in our dad's Army, when, yes, there was a larger population of spouses staying at home. Whereas, you know what? We're in 2015 now.
So what about the stereotypes that spouses have too many kids and responsibilities to work?
Nowadays, a good portion of the military spouses do work, whether it's a part-time job or it's a full-time career. A lot of them do actually work.
According to recent statistics, over 40% of military spouses are employed, with 13% actively looking for work. Not to mention the countless volunteers who spend their time running programs like AFTB. But what about education?
Another bluff that I call on that one, most of our, if they're not educated when they marry into their soldiers, there's vast opportunities for them to gain education.
Did you know that Army spouses are twice as likely to complete their high school education than their civilian counterparts, and that more than half of military spouses have some form of college education? So what do military spouses think of themselves?
Strong, tough, dependable, flexible, a lot of things that most people might have a hard time with, I think.
Someone who's always there. You've got to be willing to change quickly. You've got to be there for your husband. I mean, they're going to vent to you a lot of times, so you kind of just have to be strong.
They have to be flexible, they have to be independent, they have to be open because you're all in this unique situation where you're always moving, so you have to be kind of like, oh hey, I'm in a new place, you need to be outgoing.
You just got to be there because they can't do it without you, even if they say they can. They can't.
For family members who want to get the facts and learn more about what the Army has to offer, visit the AFTB program.
It's been great to come here and meet a lot of people that are going through the same things as me.
Melissa Bell, Fort Benning TV.
That was good. When you said myths, I was thinking of like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster.
David, those are not real.
They're real to me. Maybe I'll get my wife to enlist and I can be a military spouse.
Well, let me know how that goes. And that'll bring this edition of the Benning Report to an end.
But you can watch these stories and others on youtube.com/BenningTV or at benning.army.mil.
And you can also like us on Facebook.
From the Public Affairs Office, thanks for watching.